Sunday. Appreciate that. Yes, I got it that the meeting is being recorded. Okay, so I come by this kind of work honestly. Yes, I'm a child psychologist. Yes, I've been doing this kind of work since 1998. I also have 3 kids, including twins. So I know from whence I talk about. I also have siblings. I have 1 older stepbrother and a younger stepbrother and 2 younger stepsisters. So there are 5 of us. So I also know from some direct experience a little bit about that too. And you know, sibling rivalry is something that people do get concerned about and wonder how much is okay, is any okay, is do you just let it go? And so I was hoping to do some talking about this. I did a little bit of research to brush up on my knowledge about it because it's been a little bit since I've done a talk on sibling rivalry. And the information that I gleaned from the research that's current is still pretty consistent. There really hasn't been any tremendously different breakthroughs on sibling rivalry, except to say, I think that the philosophy now is much more about empowering children to solve their problems as much as possible. So that's the philosophy that I come with. I'm also a person who teaches at UMass, so I'm very much in mind of what does the research say, what's empirically supported. And so just know that what I'm talking about today is going to be informed by that, okay? I'd really like for this to be as useful for you as possible. I absolutely have prepared things that I'll share with you. But if you do have questions, I really do encourage you to put those into the chat, and that way we can try and tailor things to be specific and responsive to things you're curious about, or maybe I said something that was not so entirely clear, or you want me to repeat something. Any of that is a-okay by me, all right? Okay, so just know that I also have a way of approaching topics that I talk about by making sure to always start with a definition so that we can be clear about whether we're on the, everybody's in agreement, we're on the same page. And when I think about sibling rivalry, I'm just gonna share to show you where I'm coming from here with this little handout that I have. When we talk about sibling rivalry, just know that what we're talking about is when children who are in the same household are doing something where they're competing with each other for something. And that competition can be for attention, it can be for time, it can be for resources, it could be for a toy for younger kids, it could be time on the Xbox for older kids, it could be who gets the front seat of the car, it could be whose turn is it to get to have a chance to drive the car. Sibling rivalry really can look different at different ages and stages. But what we're talking about is it doesn't have to be blood relatives. It can be adopted kids, foster kids, half siblings, step siblings, like I had in my case. It's really any kids who are together, and it doesn't have to be close in age. I've certainly seen plenty of examples of children 8 or 10 years apart who still have a version of sibling rivalry. And the behaviors that would be rivalry could vary from teasing, arguing, bickering, having difficulty with taking turns and sharing, to physical, taking things without permission, excluding others physically, pushing, and unfortunately can escalate to, more severe verbal fighting and physical fighting. And so this really spans the full spectrum of typical, not too unusual, annoying to experience and to be around, but not necessarily a problem on at one end of the spectrum, all the way to very severe, very significant, absolutely, positively pull out all the stops and do something about it. And just so you know where the research is pointing us and where my own philosophy is also consistent with it, is any time where you have someone's psychological safety or their physical safety being endangered, that is the time absolutely positively to intervene. Below that, your own philosophy, the pattern of behaviors may dictate that you do want to intervene, and that's absolutely fine. But if it's at any point where someone is really at risk for their psychological functioning or their physical functioning, I really encourage you to yes, that's not a time to try to let them work it out. That's a time when the adults in charge have to come together and step in and establish safety. Okay. All right. So yeah, let me go back to that screen there, and that shows you when is it a problem. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of how common it is. And really, sibling rivalry, these kinds of behaviors happen in every family where you have more than one kiddo. It may be mild, it may be infrequent, and it happens every family. So it's incredibly common. But I think the more severe versions that I was alluding to, the psychological safety risks or the physical safety risks, I think those are less common. Still far too common, but less common. It's not the majority of situations where that occurs. So here's some thoughts. I was thinking that one way to start working with this is to get an assessment of, well, what are the behaviors that you're seeing? And then based on the frequency, the pattern, the intensity of those behaviors, if you want to do some intervention, then it's going to be useful to have a few different steps that you take towards getting ready to intervene and then intervening. And so one first step is to really do like a self-assessment. Get to know yourself. So what I mean here is thinking about, what are your personal values? What are your family's rules? What are your family's like code of ethics? How do you all think about relationships? How do you all think about independence? How do you all think about interdependence? How do you view your own self, your own history with your own siblings, if you have siblings, and what to you are your values and your objectives? What, based on your experience, would you like to now bring to your family, and what are your goals for your family? And so, a way of thinking about this first step is to really kind of get an idea about, where are your own strengths and weaknesses that you carry from just who you are and your own experiences, and how might that sort of come to have a role to play in your own family's functioning, because you're one of the leaders of the family. If you have a couple of people who, like a partner perhaps, or another person who is providing significant support and care for your kids. And so that's going to really sort of set the stage for how you think about relationships in the family. And this is a specialized version of that interaction, the sibling rivalry behaviors. So once you've done that good sort of first step of self-assessment, and then if there are other adults who are taking care of the kids with you, like a partner or another person who's providing care, like a grandparent, now do that same kind of process in talking with them. What are their thoughts? What are their expectations? What do they bring to the family? Because it's very common. I'm married. My wife and I are very much on the same page with our goals and our values. And it's incredibly common and expected that we're going to have different points of view about things because we're different people. And so, part of this first step is then getting onto that same page, like assessing, what do you think about sibling rivalry? It's not unusual for one partner to say, well, I really think kids should work it out for themselves. And for the other partner to be sort of on the other side of the teeter-totter and saying, well, I really don't think it's worth letting things continue because people get hurt. People get hurt psychologically, people get hurt emotionally, people get hurt physically. And so you can see how both people have a point, both people have a value, and those are coming together, and those can work and clash, especially if you don't talk about those things. You can see how those things might come into conflict. And you can see how it's an opportunity to sort of identify those things and then see about a dynamic movement. Oh, okay, well, we both are in agreement that we want our kids to be independent and autonomous, functioning, healthy adults. And one way to get that is to practice working stuff out. And we also want to be clear about what are our warning signs that we're going to be watching for. And this is when we step in. Okay, great. So that can play on and pull out and use together in coordination the strengths of, say, two partners who might be on different sides of that teeter-totter, so that you can work dynamically to follow along and decide, okay, this is one we're going to let them go with. Okay, this is one we're going to step in and try and coach them a little bit, or maybe we need to referee a little bit and separate people. Okay. All right. So let's go back to that handout. Share screen. Okay. So knowing yourself, that's where, you do that thinking about yourself and explicitly doing some talking with any other partners. The next step would be thinking about your kids. Because, as I'm sure you're crystal clear about, given that the majority of people, everyone who signed up for this thinking about sibling rivalry, I am willing to bet everyone's got more than one kiddo. You know that those kids are different, right? So we have twins, they're fraternal twins, which means that they are, genetically related, no more and no less than any other sibling pair. They're not identical twins. They don't share 100% of their genes. And despite the fact that they came into the world within 5 minutes of each other, and that world is very much the same, we're the same parents with those kids, from day one, they were different, right? And this is true for every child. From day one, they come in with their own genetics and they start to interact with the world. And that interplay between us and them over time helps them to become who they are. So even identical twins, and I've known lots of sibships of identical twins, even identical twins are not identical, truly, because their personalities are different. And so get to know your kids. Who are they? What did they bring into the world? What kind of temperaments do they have? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Where are they vulnerable? Where do they have assets that you might be able to parlay and help work relationships out? And so you may notice that, this kiddo needs more coaching and needs more support. And this kiddo is very much a take charge, I want to do it myself kind of kiddo. And that's fine. You also may notice that over time, across development, things shift, right? So I was getting ready for this presentation today, and I was watching a very old video of my kids interacting with each other. And the twins were doing dress up, and they were clomping around in dress up shoes and making all kinds of a racket and having a great time. Whereas our older kiddo was trying to build some blocks and was doing some more quiet play over in the corner, and kept saying to the twins, "Oh, you're being so loud. You're being so disruptive. Can you please stop that? Can you?" Right. So at different developmental times, you may see those interactions more conflicting with what each of them wants to do and is able to do and what their interests are. And then at other times, like when the kids were just a few years older and all of them were into Minecraft, they had many, many hours where they were sitting together and having a great time building stuff together on Minecraft. And so, you might see over time that things shift and evolve. So if there's a problem at one point, don't assume it means forever we're going to have a problem. It's an opportunity to solve at that point. And if things are going along swimmingly, that's great. Just know at a different age and developmental stage, like, when kids start to hit that 11, 12, and they like to spend time in their rooms and closing the door, that you might see some more opportunities for challenges that can become clashes. All right. Also, I have a couple of thoughts here about knowing your kids, knowing your children, that what might be really seemingly trivial or small to you really can be a very big deal to them. And so what I know is, in one of my experiences, that something as simple as a 15-minute later bedtime for the older kiddo who doesn't need that sleep can really be a big deal to them, can feel like a big privilege, and can really help them feel good for themselves, right? That they're being treated as an individual, as someone who has wants and needs, and is ready for that. So, sometimes the front seat is a really big deal for kids. Other times they could care less. And so really getting to know, what do your kids like and what do they not like, is something that you can really then sort of file away and potentially use for some of the interventions that you might choose to do. I also have a little point here, which I think is always worth trying to remember, is that kids do things, we all do things for a reason. Behavior always happens for a reason. There's always something that precedes a behavior. There's always something that follows a behavior. And that landscape of behaviors, it's not to excuse a behavior. It's to simply try to understand that behavior doesn't appear out of a vacuum, right? Even if it's a thought, or if it's a feeling, or if it's waking up on the wrong side of the bed, or it's something that happened at school. Every behavior has a cause, a proximal cause, something that happened right before it, or something that sort of set the stage for it earlier in the day. So when you see a behavior, perhaps a sibling rivalry behavior, like one of your kids taunting another one, and it seems like it came out of the blue, just know that, okay, it seems like that came out of the blue, but try to adopt an attitude of curiosity of, I wonder what's going on there. What happened? And so having an idea about something might have happened just before that triggered that teasing. And it's also possible that there's some other stuff that preceded that in the minutes, hours, day, a couple of days before that could have preceded that too. And so trying to adopt that curiosity of, where is this coming from? What function does this behavior serve? What might have caused this behavior? Can really help you then clue into then potential ways to start to intervene, right? So one of our kids we noticed is absolutely one of those kids, just gonna turn this off, you can see me, is one of those kids who just needs more sleep than the average Joe and Jane. And the other two also need less sleep than the average Joe and Jane. And so one of the things that we noticed is she was trying to stay up with the other two, and just it would set her up for being exhausted the following day, which led to all kinds of challenging interactions between them. And as you all know, I certainly know this too, if you're not getting good sleep, if you're feeling tired, it can really leave you pretty vulnerable to being irritable, to having a shorter fuse, to having less of an easy time managing challenges, right? And so that was setting up inadvertently her to have some of these behaviors that were really pretty problematic and leading to bickering and that kind of stuff. And so what we learned is, well, yes, you do need an earlier bedtime, and you feel badly that you're not spending that, you're missing out of that extra time that the older kid, not older, well, she's 5 minutes younger than her sister. than the other two kids get. And a way to try to help with that is we're going to lie down with you and read with you and talk with you before your bedtime, even though it is, believe it or not, an hour earlier than the other two. So, getting to know your kids, really trying to be curious about them, be curious about the behavior. What function might that behavior be serving, and what might be setting up that behavior or triggering that behavior that releases it, can really then help you to start to head off some of these problems. Because, a general principle, I'm sure you all have heard this, is it is far easier to prevent a problem or a challenging behavior than it is to intervene. Interventions absolutely can be successful, but prevention is much more often going to be easier, more successful, and just feel better for everybody. Okay.
Dr. Ope, I have a question.
Yes, shoot.
A question from me, not in the chat.
Sure.
So I hear sometimes working with families and older kids who have siblings who, obviously annoy them. And sometimes I think the older sibling feels like because they're older, they have to be more responsible in solving the disagreement. And it often leads to them feeling like I'm responsible for it. And even though that maybe the sibling is doing something wrong, and that there's no intervention because they're expected to just be the bigger person. So I'm just curious what your guidance would be there for families.
Yeah, Angela, I think that's a really great question, because it's true, older children absolutely generally have more capabilities. They have more experience on this planet. They have better developed cognitive abilities, generally get better developed emotional control. They're more savvy in relationships in terms of their experiences and knowing how to work things out. And so, yes, it's absolutely also the case that you may have reasonably more expectation for an older kiddo about their participation in working stuff out. That doesn't mean, though, that I would recommend deferring all responsibility to them, because they're still a sibling, right? And so even though they're older, even though they have more experience, just in terms of the family org chart, the hierarchy there, I'm the dad and you all are all the kids. And yes, there's different power dynamics. That's true, because you are different ages and you have different experiences and different abilities. And so I understand that. And I am not going to expect you, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to expect an older kid to always be responsible for that. It might be worth, like if it's a significant age gap and that older kiddo is significantly older, like I've often seen where there'll be a teenage older sibling and then like a 6, 7, 8-year-old younger sibling. Pretty big age gap, often like around 8 years. And that can feel really challenging. And so thinking about where is that older kiddo at developmentally. Teenagers, their job is to figure out, who am I? What is my relationship to the world? Where am I going in these next steps? They're really starting to think about independence and autonomy. And so they're ready for lots of challenges. And younger siblings can often see and feel that. Certainly parents can see and feel that too, with doors being closed in our faces and that kind of stuff. So younger siblings can also feel that. And so that can lead to challenging interactions and behaviors, bids for attention and interaction from younger kiddo to older kiddo, and rebuffs by the older kiddo to the younger kiddo. That can really be painful for everybody involved. And so, with adolescents, I think starting to talk to them as the budding adults that they are and discussing with them, here is our family value. Here is what I'm observing. What's going on from your point of view? So it's starting to really try to engender that older child with accessing their good skills. What do you see? What's happening? What do you think we might be able to do about this? What do you think would be effective? Sometimes the answer is, well, I think that little Johnny or Susie should move to the moon and they will just leave me alone for the rest of my life. And that's okay. I understand how they might feel that way, but obviously we're not going to launch anyone to another planet. So I think, you know, that sort of reflects my philosophy around, you know yourself, you know the kids, and you work with them as much as possible to play to their strengths, to communicate to them, I love you, I trust you, I actually think you can solve lots of problems and lots of challenges. I will help you with that as much as possible. Sometimes I'm going to take charge when I think that it's really important for me to take charge. Other times, if it's less of a, it feels like a big deal because it's annoying and it's a smaller deal. So then we're going to try to encourage you all to work it out. And we're right here. I think that that's a good way to try to balance that out. Is that making sense, Anjali?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great. Great. Okay, so think about this. All right, so let me go back to the sharing. Good. All right, and so I think in knowing your kids and knowing how the your family values, perhaps you'll have some family meetings, perhaps you'll have some discussions together about what makes sense, what are ways that are fair. Fair means giving people what they need. It doesn't mean always treating everyone exactly the same. So in other words, you wouldn't give a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old the same bedtime, right? So treating everybody fairly and emphasizing that is giving everybody what they need, and that changes over time. And as much as possible, soliciting from everybody in the family, well, what are some ways we might want to solve this? What are some suggestions that you all have? And that's where I'm talking about here, this third section, laying out the rules. So you've gotten clear about what your expectations are. You've gotten clear with your partner. You're clear about what you all bring to the table, what you aspire to have your family's values be, what are your goals for your family, and then you talk about that with the kids, right? Trying to help to emphasize, to codify, to be explicit about, we treat everyone with respect. We are a team. We are always there for each other. We may not always like each other. We are always going to treat each other with respect. We're always going to show our love that way, right? And, some folks really like to get, and some kids really value visual reminders. Some families really work well with, playing games to really try to emphasize these rules, or putting up sticker charts. Some kids and some families really work very well with that. Others are a little more a little more open-ended and a little more spur of the moment and spontaneous and creative. And instead of going with the sticker chart, but everybody's clear about the values, are clear about the general principles. Whatever works for your family is fine. It doesn't mean every family has to have a sticker chart. I just want to be clear in what I'm saying, that if sticker chart works for you, go for it. Why not? But if it doesn't, don't try to force fit it for your family, okay? All right, and then general principles that I think about. The most important thing, and I'm just repeating myself a little bit here, the most important thing is prevention. And then the next most important thing is being sure to try to increase the frequency of good behavior. Because if kids are getting along well, if things are calm, if people are staying out of each other's way in ways that feel fine for everyone involved, that prevents, it squeezes out opportunities for problems. So the more good interactions there are, the more good behaviors there are, the more sharing and cooperation there is, the more letting people have space there is, the fewer opportunities there are for problems to pop up, right? And so a way to do that is very behavioral and simple, which is catch your kids being good. it is so easy for us to catch them, uh, uh, getting into problems because, man, that whiny tone of voice, or that bickering, or that sharp thump sound that you hear when something was thrown at somebody or the door gets slammed, um, those really grab our attention, and that's a problematic. It's a sign of a problematic behavior or problematic interaction, and that really grabs our attention to check out what's going on and see about intervening. If we really try to also emphasize catching our kids being good when things are quiet, when we don't hear the bickering, and doing things that our kids like, that will increase the likelihood of that to continue to happen. Oh, geez, you guys are playing that Xbox. You're doing so well playing. I have no idea what you're doing there, but it looks like you're doing great teamwork. Way to go. Looks like you guys are having fun. If your kids like praise. Most people do like praise. A few don't. But most do. So knowing your children and knowing what they like, give them some when you see that they're doing well together. And that, for me, I think doing those little spontaneous, hey, everyone did a great job this weekend. We had a really nice weekend together. And look, everyone's done with their chores. What do you say after dinner? We head out to Cook Farm and get some ice cream. Simple, small things like that really are memorable. They are lasting. They don't have to be huge things where you're spending hundreds of dollars at a shot. They can really be very powerful motivators for seeing more of that kind of behavior. Okay. So really trying to emphasize catch kids being good. And also finding opportunities to have them have shared experiences that they like. Like if everyone likes the movies, every once in a while, have them choose a movie to go to together and foot the bill. Right? Or if everyone likes going for a hike on the Robert Frost Trail, go for it. Because those are shared things that really encourage teamwork, that really encourage cooperation and help everyone to feel good. On the other side, everyone, even the most extroverted of us, everyone sometimes needs some downtime, some alone time. Everyone sometimes needs their own thing, their own space, their own activity. And so also trying to watch for that, what do your kids need? What do your kids enjoy independently, and giving them opportunities, supporting them with that, nurturing that, offering those kinds of things. Hey, I saw the flyer come from the high school that there's a choir tryouts starting up this week. Is that something that you might want to do? Really helps your kids to feel like, oh, right, they see me, they know me, and this is my thing, right? So we both want opportunities to practice our kids. We want our kids to have opportunities to practice being with each other and cooperating and working stuff out. We also want to make sure that we give them the time and space that they need, doing some of the things that they need on their own, because that'll go a long ways to reducing some of that vulnerability to irritability and conflict and competition.
Dr. Hope, I have a question about the physical space for alone
Oh,
time. Yeah. If you have siblings who share a room, how would you recommend something like that, where, obviously a lot of kids like to go to their room to spend that alone time.
Right. And certainly not all of us have a separate bedroom for every kid, right? Or for every person in the house. That's just not possible for most of us, really. So it doesn't have to be a bedroom. And yes, they both may prefer, say, two or sharing a bedroom. They both may prefer it. And it's one of those things, it's an opportunity to try to practice problem solving. Well, you both love the bedroom and you both want to have time in the bedroom. What other spaces do you like? What other times do you like? So you may have a kiddo who really likes getting to use the computer at the counter with you while you're preparing dinner. And that might be some alone space for them. Or it might be, you have another space in the house, maybe a den, where they can watch some TV. Or there may be a workshop that one of your kids likes to tinker in. Really, it can be anything. So getting to know your kids again that way is useful for finding other spaces inside the house that they may be able to go sort of away, even if they're not completely alone, even if they're not in a closed off room. It may feel like a space where they can go to. And it's also an opportunity to talk with the kids about, well, if you both want the room, how are we going to work this out? Okay, you come up with an idea about taking turns one day and then the next day. Fine. You guys agree with that? That's fine. So is that answering that kind of question? Yeah,
Yes.
it is challenging. And I think one of the incredible valuable assets that we have in these towns, in Amherst and Northampton and all these towns, is there are lots of other very accessible spaces. So when your kids are a little bit older, say middle school and up, maybe they like to spend time at the library. Maybe they like to spend time at the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe they like to spend time on the basketball courts. So there are other spaces outside the home too, that depending on your age, depending on the developmental status and what they're capable of, they may also be able to start to think of, all right, well, I really like being out and about, and I like getting my homework done at the school library before I leave. So I'm going to stay late, and my brother, my sister, my sibling is going to be able to use the room right after school for their homework instead. So that's great. That's fine. You're helping to nurture those individual needs based on where they're at and what they can do and what would be possible. Yeah, good question.
There's another question that just came
yeah.
through the chat, if you want to do that
Yeah.
one. From
Sure.
Julie. My 9-year-old kid has ADHD, and I suspect my 4-year-old does as well. I know you're saying they should try and work it out themselves, but it feels like they need way more adult support. Is that okay to support until they learn the skills needed to work it out themselves? The 9-year-old has a hard time with no, and the 4-year-old is very reactive and always immediately goes to hitting.
Yeah, so hitting's the sure sign of absolutely positively be there to intervene. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be frustrated. We don't hit in the family. It's not okay to hit, right? First and foremost, intervene with that. And I think scaffolding based on what your children need, Julie, and being clear about, all right, well, what are their skills? What are their capabilities? What's relatively easier for them? What's relatively more challenging? And so meet them where they're at there, and then try to help coach them along to more and more advanced problem solving, until soon enough it'll be, hey, you guys don't need me. You figured this out already. Way to go. Catching them being good with successes. Does that answer your question, Julie? Well, let's see. Okay, well, I hope so. And if not, do a follow-up, okay? You got it. Okay, let's see. Back to sharing. Some more of these sort of general principles. Treating your children fairly. Oh, one-on-one time. This is another one that's hard. One-on-one time on some kind of regular basis is great. As much as you can do that, I think is great. Some of our families are really very creative in finding ways that a parent can spend one-on-one time with each and every one of the kids every week. And I think that's awesome. I think it's also challenging. It is gold, though. It really is gold. So don't feel badly if you can't do it every week with every kid. I don't. I have 3 kids, and absolutely positively, I don't get to spend one-on-one time with every one of them every week. And that's because of the rhythms of my family, where what we do, where we're at, who's going to what activity, where are you? It just makes it hard. And don't underestimate how valuable one-on-one time could be in something simple like going food shopping. You might have a kiddo who really enjoys that time with you. Great. So when my kids were younger and they had less choice in this, I would take them out with me when I would go food shopping. And it was a really nice time. It was a good way for us to connect individually. And so that was a way that at least once in that opportunity there, I was connecting with the kids. So, it doesn't have to be a date night, although a date night together would be great. Go out and have dinner or go grab like a breakfast sandwich together. If you can do that, super. And if you can't, for whatever reasons, don't feel badly about that. Just continue to think creatively and look for those opportunities to connect one-on-one. Reading together at night before bed, or folding laundry together, or running an errand for, picking up a Valentine for one of the other parents. Great, right? Those are all opportunities to connect one-on-one. And they're all valuable because our kids, despite what some of the 13-year-olds say, our kids do love us and do want to spend time with us. I said this earlier, treating children fairly. I'm just going to sort of revisit that point just briefly. Fair means giving them what they need. They are absolutely, especially those 8, 9, 10-year-olds, are really exquisitely tuned into how much everyone gets and what's fair and what is not fair in their view. And so emphasizing to yourself, but also to the family, fair is giving people what they need, not giving everyone exactly the same, right? So like at dinner time, you wouldn't give exactly the same amount of food to a 14-year-old that you would to a 6-year-old, right? And so when the 6-year-old sees, I don't know, that the 14-year-old gets 3 cookies and the 6-year-old only gets 1, they squawk about things not being fair because it's a different number. You can help to re-emphasize, well, this is based on what everyone needs, and everyone's different ages, and everyone's different sizes, and everyone's metabolism is different. So I encourage you to file that principle away, that fair is giving people what they need. All right. And really celebrating your family, celebrating your kids' individual differences and their cooperation goes a long way to creating an atmosphere of cooperation, of creating an atmosphere of team, your family's team. Even if they don't spend lots of time together, your family ties are the ones that bind you together. And those are the things that will last forever and help to really lay that groundwork for lifelong relationships with each other, but also how they relate to other people. Because your children's siblings are their first peers. And that is a step towards working out peer relationships. Down the road, if they choose to go that route, romantic relationships too. And then if they choose to have children, how they have their own children and how they foster relationships between their own children. Not to put too much pressure here. So your efforts to really catch kids being good, to foster positive opportunities together, to foster opportunities in time one-on-one, really goes a long way to creating that atmosphere. And I think it will go a long way to helping everyone else feel like things are more peaceful together. And then just a reminder here about remembering your kids are capable. They have strengths. They have capabilities. They have assets. They're smart. They're fun. They're able to do stuff in this world. And so having that belief as you observe them bickering with each other, that, okay, I might have to help them a little bit more than I would really love to. And I think they can work this out. So I might have to coach them along. I might have to scaffold and structure this a little bit and guide it a little bit. And I know that they can work it out. Even very young kids, 2, 3, 4-year-olds can work out problems. And so that belief translates into them feeling that they're believed, that they can work stuff out, and helps to build confidence that they can work stuff out. And with success, they start to build a feeling of competence with a P. And like, I can do stuff. I can solve this. And so you will find sometimes you might overhear them talking about arguing over who gets the next turn on the Xbox and what would be fair. You may hear them work it out themselves. And so that's one of those things to sort of file away. And then over dinner time, you might want to lay out a little bit of praise if they like praise and say, hey, I heard you all. I know that that's been a challenging thing in the past, working out time on the Xbox. I'm really proud of you for how you worked that out. Good job. It can be something as small and simple as that. And just as a reminder, if there's hitting, if there's safety concerns, absolutely positively intervene. As best as possible, try to stay calm. We're all in this together. We're all parents. And this parenting stuff is not for the faint of heart. It's a challenging thing. You're part of a big community. There's lots and lots of resources. There are great books. I use one called Siblings Without Rivalry. There are lots of really good ones you can find at the library or look on Amazon and see what sort of connects for you and helps you to feel like, oh yeah, this is speaking my language. This is speaking about my family. Because there are lots of different ways to get there. And there's lots of us out here to offer you support. So happy to try to do that.
Dr. Hope, what would be an example of like an emotional safety thing? I know you said physical, like hitting.
Oh, sure. If you hear teasing that is personal, right? Like, well, no wonder no one asked you to the dance for Valentine's Day because you're ugly, you're not smart, you hear those things that poke at the core characteristic of a person from one sibling to another. Another one about emotional safety would be if you consistently see, like say you have 3 kids or 4 kids, you consistently see all of them ganging up on one over and over again. That's an indication that you might have some emotional safety at risk. You know it when you see it. If it goes to your gut and makes your gut do a little flip-floppy, that's one of the ones where you could say, pull that kiddo aside. Hey, what's going on here? What are you thinking about that? How did that go? And intervene. Yeah, I would love any other questions that people have. Happy to try to make things relevant or clarify things.
Please feel free to just unmute if you'd like.
Sure. Let's see, I'll read this question aloud just in case folks aren't seeing the chat. Wondering how to handle when my 10-year-old gets invited to a friend's house and I cannot find someone for my 8-year-old to play with. She gets very jealous over that. Did I mention I have twins? And they happen to be twin girls who go to the same school, and it's not a huge school. It's, it's Amherst High. And so some of their friends are the same and some are not. And one will get invited to whatever, a birthday party, and the other one won't. Very hard. It's painful and it's challenging for that other kiddo. So I always think it's okay to validate and empathize. Say with the 8-year-old, oh, geez, I know it can be sad for you. I know it can feel lonely for you. I know it can feel hard for you when your other sibling gets invited out, and that hurts. Validation. Next step is, hey, you know what though? Now we have some time that we can connect. How about we make that recipe we've been talking about doing? Or how about we go run this errand and then we'll stop and get an ice cream together? Or how about we go out for a walk, just you and me? I know you've been wanting to test out your bike. So it becomes an opportunity for one-on-one connection. Is that answering your question, Melissa? Yeah, good. Good. Other questions or things folks want to clarify? Appreciated your plug at the beginning. Do your own inventory about independence looks like, a self-value clarification step. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for emphasizing that. I really, I think so much of our parenting these days is, okay, I've got my own stuff to take care of, working outside of the home, working inside the home. I've got my relationships with my parents to take care of, or my grandmother lives with us, my grandmother, or my own friendships. And, oh, now I have this bickering happening right in front of me about who gets to ride in the front seat. What a stupid thing to argue over. Why are you guys arguing over who gets to ride in the front seat, right? It can be really challenging because we have so many demands being put on us, and it's so rapid fire that it can be hard to take that step. And so I really do think as much as you have that time and space to try to be thoughtful about that, that can really pay off. Okay, someone whose screen is labeled iPhone has raised their hand. So if you want to either type it in or talk away, what's your question?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. My name's Michaela, and I'm sorry.
Hi, Michaela.
It's on a phone. I don't do this much.
That's okay.
So you mentioned a couple times about a kid who doesn't want positive comments or reinforcement, and that is my 9-year-old daughter. I have tried like even sort of visual cues, just a thumbs up or a wink or a kiss on the head as I walk by when she's doing something good with her brother. But even these little side steps, she grimaces, she wrinkles up, and I don't know where to go next. So
it's so hard because so many of us really like positives, right? For those of us who work outside the home, we work not for the sheer joy of it, but because we get paid, right? That is a positive reinforcer. It gives us access to stuff we want and need. So it's so hard for us to even conceptualize that there are kids out there who find praise aversive. And, I feel for you, Michaela, because it's challenging. And I 100% guarantee that there are things that Michaela likes, and it may not be praise. And if you watch, what are the things she likes to spend time doing? What are the things that seem to motivate her? I guarantee you're going to find things that you might be able to use for those little reinforcers that are positive for her, even though they're not that simple little praise thing for you. So it might be like she really likes being able to crochet or spend some time on the iPad playing Minecraft. So when you notice something happening that's positive, you can then say to her, hey, I noticed how you worked that out with your brother. You've just earned an extra 15 minutes of Minecraft tonight. Or, hey, how about we go to Michael's and pick up another skein of that yarn that I know you like to crochet with. So watch her. What are the things that seem to draw her? What are the things, bigger and smaller, that seem to be things that motivate her? And then try to find ways to include those. Is that it? Giving you some ideas, Michaela?
Yeah, that's great. I will, I'm already kind of thinking of a few things. So thank
Good.
you.
Good. You're welcome. Good luck.
Thanks. I'll take it.
All right, here's another question. I have 13-year-old identical twin boys, congratulations, who are very competitive when they play games, especially or when there is a friend over. Games can get very fraught. We try not to get involved, but it's difficult when things get very upsetting for them. So that is one of those things to watch for, right? Because many games are competitive, like by their very nature, they're competitive. And so trying to kind of monitor the emotional temperature gauge there and how are they doing together, even when it's tense, if it looks like they're managing and they're working it out and it's okay, great. Let them go for it. And then give them some of those positives along the way afterwards. If it looks like they just keep getting stuck and someone will say, well, fine, forget it, I quit. And that seems to be happening as a pattern. That might be, a sign of, we need to step in a little bit more and try and help out, which might mean helping them to find things that they can play together where they're on the same team. And maybe they're on a team against someone else. Sometimes that can work out more positively because they're cooperating with each other. Other times you'll start hearing things like, oh, I can't believe you missed that shot. Oh, you made us lose the game. Oh, all right. So that might be, let's take turns with one-on-one with someone else instead of with each other. Twins are hard. There are lots and lots and lots of twins. There are lots of other kids who are really pretty close in age. I've worked with plenty of siblings who are 13, 14, 15 months apart. And so they might as well be twins by the time they get up to that, 7, 8-year-old range where there's just one grade separating them. And so it really does provide some additional challenges. And it means continuing to try to look for those opportunities where you can have some of that individual activity, where are sometimes, even for a little bit of time here and there, where each of them gets to explore something that's just theirs, as much as you can support that. I think that'll help to decrease some of the energy in the competition between the two of them. Is that addressing what you're hoping to get to? Yes? Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Good. What else? All right. While folks are thinking, I'm just going to share one more time my screen because I have the book title just in case people are curious about that, but there's lots of others. Okay, yeah, here it is. Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish wrote Siblings Without Rivalry. Adele Faber has also done a lot of other books like How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk, that kind of series of books. But like I said, there really are lots of them out there. And they're all good. They really are. If you go to Amazon and you look up one of these, I guarantee below it, you'll see 10 other titles. I also have on here my contact information if anyone would like to reach out with a follow-up question. I'm happy to try to answer. Let's see, in the chat, one sister loves space, the other wants nothing more than to be together. Yep. So one of our kiddos is an introvert, one of our kiddos is an extrovert. They are diametrically opposed. Finding some of those things that that everyone enjoys together, I think is valuable, and encouraging time and space for each of them, but then also finding some more opportunities for your little extroverted kiddo to connect with other folks, other kids, other friends, other activities, can help them to feel like they're getting some of that social connection need met. Because that's also true of peer relationships. You may be really fond of a kid and they may be busy with other kids too. And so learning how to modulate that, how to handle that, how to manage your emotions around that, and deal with the fear of missing out and fear of rejection. You're working with that in your sibling relationship. You're working with that in peer relationships, and that's, you know, a good training ground for our work relationships and our romantic relationships. Doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. Doesn't mean that there won't be hurt feelings sometimes. There will, and that's okay. Again, as long as it's not like emotionally dangerous, it gives you an opportunity to validate. Oh, I know you really want to spend time with your sister, and she is really needing some time alone to do her homework and do some reading. And I know that that's painful because you really love spending time with her. And I know that she loves you too, and I know that's great. And how about you and I take a walk down the playground, and we'll see if any of your friends down there. You know, there is nothing wrong with validating. Validation is an incredibly powerful tool, one that we parents sometimes forget to do, are sometimes reluctant to do because we're concerned that it might be some sort of endorsement. Validation is not necessarily endorsement. Validation doesn't necessarily mean you agree. It means I can understand if I put myself inside your shoes, why you would think and feel the way you do. I get it. I get why you would feel hurt that your sister doesn't want to spend the 13th hour with you today. And you feel badly about that and feel upset about that. I get that. That hurts, and I'm sorry. Which doesn't necessarily mean that you think that's, you know, right or the only interpretation. It just means you understand. And that validation, when they feel heard, opens them up to the possibility of trying something different. So I'm really sorry that that hurts. And what do you say you and I take a walk to the playground? You might be surprised how that goes. Someone just joined in. Okay, so just finished reading Siblings Without Rivalry. Great. Thank you, Charlotte, for that endorsement. One of the big things the authors consistently comes back to is reflecting back when your children might be feeling. Yes, that's the validation. 6-year-old, 13-year-old often find when I validate their feelings, my 5-year-old gets really mad. Mommy, stop saying that. And my 12-year-old says something, Mommy, stop doing that thing in the book. They got your number, don't they? Validation, there's lots of different ways that you can do validation too. One of the ways is to say stuff. Another one is radical genuineness. And that can be that moment where you make eye contact with your kiddo and you feel what you imagine they're feeling, and that embodiment shows up on your face and you connect with them. Maybe you give them a hug and a squeeze, or you lean in. It doesn't have to be words. You can try a few different approaches to communicate. I think I'm I'm putting myself in your shoes. I think I'm getting what you might be thinking and feeling. And then try to convey that through your presence, your attitude, your energy, your posture, and see if that lands. Because I my kids know I'm a psychologist, and when I do that validation thing and I do some reflective listening, sometimes they'll say, you're just parroting back to me like that psychologist 101 stuff again, aren't you? They totally call me out on it. But there are other ways to do it, right? And so I think trying to practice those different, sending those signals along different routes, you might come across one that's more successful. Yeah, good luck with that, Charlotte. And it might not always be that way. So things might change. Okay, another question. When one child starts playing with using something, the younger one decides that's when she wants to play with it, even if it's not used for a very long time, often ends up in tears. If I can't get her into playing with something else, what is another way to try to handle that? Geez, that's an opportunity, right? To say, oh, guys, do you need some help with working this out? It seems like this is leading to challenge for you all. And they might say, no, we got this. Then back off and sort of pretend like you're doing something else and listen. Or they might say, yeah, why is it always when I start using the Legos that she wants to use the Legos that she hasn't used all day all of a sudden? Okay, well, what do you all want to do? What do you think might be a fair way to work this out? And then you might be surprised by what you hear. That's an opportunity for them to practice. You're doing some coaching and you're doing some scaffolding. If that doesn't work, okay, so the littler one is not playing with something else. It can be a great opportunity to continue to try to distract. Oh, geez, I just remembered that we need to get the hamburger out of the freezer to start cooking for tonight. Can you help me with that? I have trouble keeping the door open and pulling that out. So asking for help, especially with younger kids who love to be able to help out their parents, is an opportunity for them to feel good, to feel like they're competent, to feel like they're helpful, to feel like they're needed. So that might be a way to try to go at it too. Good. All right. Thanks, Melissa. What else? Other thoughts or questions? The good news is the days are getting longer and the days are getting warmer, and that's more opportunities to help them go outside. Because when we're stuck inside on top of each other and feeling like, some of us are very much wintry people and love getting out there anyway. Some of us are not so much. So as the weather gets better, it gives more opportunities for people to go and explore and do stuff together and on their own. So anything else from anyone? This might be a question for you all, Anjali.
Yeah, so I think usually I think it might get sent out to people or we post it on the website. I'll double check with Lauren. She usually is responsible for that, but
Great.
definitely let you know.
Great, thank you. Yeah, these are incredibly great resources that folks have. So anything else? Remember, you're not expected to be perfect. Remember, you're not expected to get it right on the first try. Your kids will give you plenty of opportunities to continue to practice. If you don't help them work it out successfully of who gets the front seat this time, I'm sure there will be a next time that you get an opportunity to try to help them with that. Recording will be on the NAP website. Okay, thanks, Anjali. Remember that there's lots of great resources. Remember, you're not alone. Reach out and ask. Reach out for help. Talk to each other. Talk to us. We're here to try to help. Okay.
Think.
Oh, good. Someone's off to dinner. Great. And I got to get ready for the